Now, the last speaker that we're going to call on stage, well, that I'm going to call on stage, is quite impeccable. She's known by her clients as the unlearning lady. And the reason why she's known as that is she says, your challenge is not that you're not learning. It's rather that you do not know how to unlearn in order to relearn. I hand you over now to Zanele Njapa.
Thank you so much for that fabulous introduction. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So now I want to just start off by asking you, have you ever had a situation where you feel like your team is just not moving quickly enough? There's just not enough progress. We're not changing quickly enough. We're not transitioning from where we used to be into where we want to be in quite the right way. Let me show you why that happens. I'd like you to do the following for me. Cross your arms. So just cross your arms normally. Don't overthink it. I promise this is not a trick question. But what you don't notice is that you've just crossed your arms in the instinctive, normal way for you. So I'd like you to uncross them and then cross them the other way. So the weird way, as I often like to call it. Let me know how that feels. How does that feel? And a lot of the time I get clients going, oh my goodness, this is strange. And that's exactly what your brain is saying too. Your brain is going, oh my goodness, this is weird, make it stop. So uncross and then cross the normal way. Ah, that feels better. So now what you'll notice with that activity is actually the more you do it, or the more consistently you apply to yourself the unusual or the weird way of crossing your arms, is the more you get used to it and the easier and more calming it actually feels. And that's a great way to emphasize and to show you that that's exactly how change works. The more you and I expose ourselves to environments, to situations that consistently challenge us around the new ways of seeing things and the new ways we want to put ourselves out and expose ourselves to new paradigms, the easier change gets and the more nimble and adaptable we get. And it's quite unfortunate because so many organizations don't realize that. And we go about change in so many different ways. And I'm going to show you what mistakes we often make. And you might find yourself a little bit guilty of this. Let me know how you found this. This happened in the beginning of October. Oh my goodness, lo and behold, we all freaked out. I know I did. I couldn't find my mailbox for a long enough period of time until I realized that, okay, Google Workspace has happened to all of us. And it was such an interesting case study around how you and I resist change initially. I remember it was something very similar when banknotes change. People go, oh my goodness, it doesn't even feel like real money. I give it about 10 years and then it's out of everyone's hands. But unfortunately, what we find is that these things consistently stay with us. And it's not them that end up changing, it's us. We end up starting to acclimatize to that. We end up starting to get used to it and accepting the change. But unfortunately, the reason why so many of our organizational transitions and change management processes don't work out is because you and I don't understand that. We just don't get that individuals change so differently from the way we expect them to as organizations and even as leaders. And that's really what I do and what I help so many clients to realize. Let me give you another example of this. Have a look at the image that's on your screen at the moment and tell me what you see. I'll tell you what is in there. In this picture, there is a sad man and there's also an angry man. I don't like to say mad man because that's got a few connotations to it. There's a sad man and then there's also an angry man. But what you'll notice is that the one that jumps out at you as you look at this image is the one who looks sad. And that's okay, because it's designed that way. I always tell my clients that in order to see the angry man, you're going to have to do something that I call maneuver. Now do this for me. Fortunately, most of us, our videos are turned off. I can't see you. Don't be embarrassed. It's all right. I'd like you to do the following for me. Block out the man's eye that's closest to the words. I promise this works. That's closest to the words, and then tilt your head slightly to the left. And then let me know now if you can see the man who looks angry. And the tip I always give to my clients is that the way that you saw the man who looks sad is not the way that you are going to perceive or understand the angry looking man. And it's such a great analogy for how you and I move into new spaces, because we often come into these new spaces because we've got these well-formed synapses in our minds and neural connections that really create defaults around how we think, how we see things, how we perceive, and even how we interact with our environments and each other. And that's okay. But if we want to unlearn and shift ourselves into new paradigms, new ways of seeing things, new business models that are responding to the disruption that's happening all around us, it's going to need you and I to create new defaults. Now, I want to just let you know about a really quick, interesting story that outlines what I'm talking about. In early 2012, this happened. So Tide released the Tide Pods, famous Tide Pods that, right, if it looks like a sweet and it feels like a sweet, it's actually not a sweet, it's a Tide Pod. So in 2012, Tide released what they called Tide Pods. And the idea around the Tide Pods was that they were supposed to make laundry super easy for each and every individual and each and every home. But what they didn't see coming was that individuals were actually going to find Tide Pods very appealing in the not expected way. And individuals started eating the Tide Pods. And here's the funny part of the story. When The Onion published an article about a particular reader who was dying to put these Tide Pods in their mouths, Tide actually put out a statement and said to everyone, don't eat Tide Pods. They are poisonous. But guess what? As soon as they did that, those numbers shot up. More and more people were going, oh my goodness, why are they saying we shouldn't eat Tide Pods? Let's try them. Let's try eating Tide Pods. So the reason why I tell you that story is because there are really three things around organizational change that particular case study tells you and I, and that I often speak to my clients about. The first one, people don't change because you've told them to change. And unfortunately, this is what so many of us are doing. We're going, this is the new direction that the company is going to take. Now everyone go. But unfortunately, that's not how individuals change at a neuroscience, at a psychological, and even at a social level. And the second thing that tells us is that our environments are everything. If the environment you've created around the office is one that doesn't promote and support change, then unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. And then the last thing that tells us is, golly, please don't eat Tide Pods, right? I mean, if there's anything, don't eat them. They are actually poisonous. And I don't want you to take this as the statement that Tide made and actually go about trying them. But seriously, please don't eat them. In a work environment where there's so much complexity and diversity, and so many of us perceive things in different ways, we interact with each other in different ways, and that diversity is not going to get less, but it's only going to get that much more complex. We're going to have even more different perspectives in the workplace, either because of the different generations we've got in the working environment, the different cultures that come to create a melting pot. So it's only going to get even more interesting, as I say. So if you're a leader that's leading a team that's changing, there are really two things that you want. And you don't want to have to compromise on them. You want engagement and you want buy-in from each and every member of your team. But then you also want results, right? You want results and you want ongoing momentum that builds itself. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to compromise. You don't have to choose engagement and sacrifice your results. You can have both. And that's why you need to talk to me. So please do reach out. Thank you very much for the time slot. I look forward to engaging with you on any of these platforms and hearing from you soon.